Subscribe to Mantold for more stories. Now let's begin this one. The two daughters I've raised on my own for 20 years stood in front of me and said, "We want to change our last name. And Dad, you were never really our father." The house went dead silent. I could hear the clock on the wall, each tick sounding like it was counting down to something in my life. Grace sat up straight on that old worn-out sofa, the same one that had witnessed every simple meal the three of us shared, and she looked right at me. No trace of the shy little girl who once cried over her first broken doll. Haley kept her head down, her hands twisting into each other. But what Grace said wasn't a slip. They had rehearsed it. Every word came out sharp, cold as steel. In that moment, I couldn't hear a thing. No cars on the street, no wind slipping through the cracks, just a hollow space widening inside me. 20 years. 20 years of working myself to exhaustion. These calloused hands. The sleepless nights sitting by their bed when they burned with fever. Those weekends when we camped out with nothing but a couple of cold sandwiches. And now all of it, wrapped up in one single sentence. "You're not our father." I didn't ask why. I didn't argue. Didn't raise my voice. I just stood there, like a stranger, dragged into a story that used to be mine. When the door closed behind them, this little room suddenly felt endless. I walked out to the garage. The old yellow bulb hanging there wasn't nearly enough to chase away the cold. On the table, an envelope lay still, a DNA test from over 20 years ago, back when their mother and I divorced. Next to it, a faded photo. Two little girls, 5 and 7, their arms wrapped around my neck, laughing so bright. On our very first picnic, I picked up the photo, my hands shaking, and I wondered, have these last 20 years just been a dream, and I've only now woken up? From this day on, have I lost more than just my children? Have I lost myself too? I thought I had already hit rock bottom, but the truth is, everything only began. From that moment on, I still remember that weekend morning, years ago, when Grace and Haley were just tiny little girls. It was barely light outside. They came running out to the porch, hair all messy, clutching a bag of cheap cookies like it was treasure. "Dad, let's go camping." The three of us threw a few things into the old pickup and drove out to the woods beyond town. That night, by the small campfire, Grace pointed at the stars. Haley sang out of tune, and I just sat there, listening to their laughter. Back then I thought, if life could stay like this, I'd be fine for the rest of my days. I was born in a Midwest town, where the roads run straight with no end, and winters cut through your skin. The steel plant at the edge of town took up the best years of every man there, mine included. My father fixed cars. My mother worked nights at a laundromat. They taught me one thing: when you choose someone, you stay, no matter what. I met Emily when I was 21. She was like a breath of air from somewhere else. Quick, bright, always talking about leaving this place. For me, just being near her made all the noise in my head go quiet. We got married in a hurry, a small wedding, no fancy rings, no big reception. But back then, I thought I had everything. Then Grace was born. 2 years later, Haley. The little house was full of their laughter. Every night I'd come home from the plant and scoop them up in my arms, still warm with the smell of milk. But for Emily, that happiness felt like a shirt too tight. She went quiet. Her eyes kept drifting to the window. Some nights, she'd sit there till morning, not saying a word. Then came the fights, about money, about the future. I promised I'd work more, save more, try harder. And then one morning, Grace had just turned 10. Haley was 7. Emily left a note. "I'm sorry. I can't live like this anymore. Take good care of the girls." The door closed. The house went so silent. I could hear the clock ticking. From that day on, it was just me and the kids. After that, life boiled down to 3 things: work, save, and stay together. Daytime, I was at the plant. At night, I fixed air conditioners, repaired pipes, carried heavy stuff for anyone who'd hire me. That old truck of mine was always packed with tools. Whenever I had a little extra, I'd buy them a new book, a new pair of shoes, and a dinner with beef stew, their favorite. I wasn't good with words, but every time I came home and saw them studying under that kitchen light, I felt strong enough to keep going. I promised myself, even if their mom walked away, their childhood wouldn't be left behind. Camping trips became our thing. Nothing fancy, just an old tent, a few sandwiches, a fire in the woods, and the sound of summer insects. But in those moments, I watched them grow, from shy little girls to young women standing tall at graduation. And I believed, I'll take them wherever they dream of going, if I just try a little harder. Then Emily came back. No warning. One evening, I came home from work, and there she was, standing on the porch. Beside her, a man, Jordan, in a sharp suit, polished shoes, expensive cologne. Emily said, "This is Jordan, my husband. He wants to help the girls. If you don't mind." I didn't say much. Part of me felt relieved. At least they'd have someone else to lean on. In the months that followed, Jordan showed up more and more. He found Grace an internship, introduced Haley to people in design. Gifts started showing up. A new laptop, clothes, fancy parties. At first, I was glad for them. But then, the calls came less often. Camping trips got canceled. Family dinners faded away. Once, I planned a weekend trip, just like we used to. But the morning before, Grace texted, "Jordan has an important event." "Sorry, Dad." Haley said, "I've got to go network." Jordan set it up. The house, already quiet, felt emptier than ever. I sat alone in the kitchen, staring at the empty table, missing their laughter. So bad it hurt to breathe. Back then, I thought I was just being left out of their new life. I didn't know, soon, I'd be left out of their whole world. For months, I kept telling myself, this was just a phase. People grow up. They get busy. They find new circles. Jordan showed up, brought a different world with him. All I had to do was step back and wait for the day they'd come back home. Then one evening in early fall, Grace called. Her voice didn't sound like her. Lower, slower, heavy. "Dad, we're coming over this weekend. There's something important we need to tell you." Face to face, I froze. "What is it, honey?" "We'll tell you when we see you." That night I lay awake in the dark, my mind running through a dozen scenarios. Maybe trouble at school. Maybe they need my help. I even caught myself smiling, imagining the three of us sitting together, talking late into the night, like we used to. Saturday afternoon, I cleaned the house, put a fresh cover on the sofa, set out 2 boxes of wafers, their favorite since they were little. Inside me, a mix of hope and nerves, just like the day I walked them to school for the first time. Then came the knock. Grace and Haley stood there. Their eyes were different, cautious, distant. "Come in," I said, forcing a smile. The house hasn't changed. The room felt smaller. Once they sat down, Haley kept her head down. Grace sat straight, hands locked together, ready for whatever she was about to say. "Dad," she began, steady and calm, "we wanted to tell you this ourselves, not through anyone else." I took a deep breath. "I'm listening." "Mom told us, back when she was with you, she was seeing other people, and she believes you might not be our real dad." With that single sentence, all sound disappeared. For a moment, I didn't know where I was. 20 years. Was it all real, or just some dream I had made up for myself? Grace went on. "Jordan said, if this hurts Mom, he's willing to adopt us, to make things more stable for us." Then came the next sentence, sharp as a blade. "We've thought about it, and we want him to be our father." I looked at my daughters, the same little girls, who once gripped my hands crossing the street, who called out for me in the middle of the night. When nightmares came, Grace stared straight into my eyes, cold, as if 20 years had been wiped clean. Haley kept her head down, her shoulders shaking, hands twisted tight. Memories flooded in. Their first wobbly steps, sleepless nights when fever burned through them, all those extra shifts just to pay for school. And now, all of that, reduced to one line, "Jordan is our father." I stood up, slowly opened the metal cabinet, pulled out an old envelope, its color long faded. My hands were shaking, but I set it down on the table. "This is a DNA test, from the day your mom and I divorced. For both of you. It says, by law, I'm your father." Grace picked it up, glanced at it, and set it back down, as if she hadn't even read it. "Mom says tests back then weren't always accurate. Technology's better now." I felt the strength leave my fingers. Haley spoke, her voice trembling. "Jordan said he'll take care of everything. We can test again. But this isn't about papers anymore, Dad," Grace added. Clear, firm. "We just feel Jordan fits better with our lives now. No one moved. The silence was so thick, I could hear my own heartbeat. I folded the envelope and put it back. I understand, I said quietly. If that's your decision, I won't stand in the way. They looked at me, as if waiting for me to explode. But I had nothing left to say. Grace stood. We're grateful you raised us, but we have to think about our future. I hope you can understand. I opened the door, said nothing. They walked out. The door closed. Their footsteps faded. That night, I sat alone in the garage. The weak yellow light fell across the table. There was the old photo, our very first camping trip. 2 little girls, clinging to my neck, laughing like nothing in this world could ever pull us apart. I stared at it for a long time. No tears, no anger, just a hollow space growing in my chest. And in that dark room, I asked myself, what did I do wrong? Or was I never enough? The next morning, while the city was still under fog, I began to let go. I stopped every bit of support I had been sending them each month. Insurance plans, loans. I took their names off everything. No announcements, no trace. All ties cut. Finally, I sent one last message. I've heard your decision. From today on, I won't interfere with your lives anymore. I wish you peace. I pressed send, then blocked their numbers, not out of hate, but because I knew if I saw their names light up my screen again, I wouldn't have the strength to let go. The days after that, the house grew even quieter. No more phone ringing, no unexpected knock at the door, just my own breathing in an empty space. I kept going to work, same as always, but every night, walking into this house felt different. Those empty chairs weren't just furniture anymore. They became a reminder that a whole chapter of my life had closed. I used to think losing my wife was the deepest pain I'd ever feel. But that day, when my own daughters looked me in the eye and said, "You were never our father," I understood. Some wounds never heal. And this was only the beginning. From the day I sent that last message, my little house turned into a sealed box. The moment I walked in, I could feel the air pressing down. Everything was still in its place, but the only sound left was the wind slipping through the tin roof like a long sigh. No more texts, no more calls. The names Grace and Haley disappeared from my screen, as if they had never belonged to my life. When Emily left, at least I still had my girls to hold on to. This time, it was just me. In the weeks after, I buried myself in work. Day shift at the plant, nights taking whatever jobs I could find. Anything to keep from coming home, to stare at 4 walls. Dinner was just one plate. The sound of fork and knife against the dish echoed through the kitchen, sharp enough to raise goosebumps. I taught myself to get used to that cold sound. One evening, a coworker came by, patted me on the shoulder. "Hey, Morgan, haven't seen your girls around in a while, huh?" I just smiled. They're grown now, busy with their own lives. Then I turned away quickly, before anyone saw how red my eyes had gotten. On weekends, I'd drive out to the lake outside town, the same place we used to pitch a tent. I didn't build a fire, didn't roll the windows down, just sat there in the truck, watching the flat water, like a giant mirror. And on that mirror, the shadow of one man, sitting alone, stretched all the way to the far bank. One time, I saw a young dad teaching his 2 little girls how to skip stones. The pebbles danced across the surface, and their laughter cut straight through me. I started the truck and drove off before it spilled out of my eyes. 3 months later, on a Thursday night, my phone rang. Unknown number. I hesitated, but the ringing kept going. Finally, I picked up. "Dad, it's me. Haley." I went silent. "What is it?" My voice came out low, heavy. On the other end, only the sound of shaky breathing. "Dad, will you come to my graduation?" My hand tightened on the phone, and just like that, all the memories came rushing back. That cold stare, the words "Jordan is our father," that envelope on the table. A part of me wanted to run to her, but I swallowed it. "Thanks for inviting me, but you should take Jordan. I'll congratulate you from here." On the line, a sob broke through. "Dad, I'm sorry. I never thought it would turn out like this." I closed my eyes. "It's okay. Just live well. That's enough for me." I hung up and sat there in the dark, still holding the phone. Like if I let it go, I'd shatter. A week later, an envelope came in the mail. Inside, a photo from the ceremony. Grace and Haley, standing next to Jordan, smiling so bright. No note, not a single word. I put the photo in a drawer. This time, it didn't cut like a knife. It was just a hollow space. Cold. Where my heart used to be. Months passed. My world narrowed down to just two places, the plant and the wooden house. Sometimes someone asked, "Why don't you go see them?" And I just said, "What for?" When they no longer want to be found. Then one early summer day, a text from Grace lit up my phone. 4 words. "Dad, I need to talk." I stared at it for a long time. Then typed, "Where?" We met at a small coffee shop. Grace walked in, composed, but her eyes had changed. No more of that confident shine. Just tension. "I came to say sorry," she said right away. "We made a mistake. Jordan, he's not the same anymore. He's in trouble with money. Mom's falling apart." I just wanted to say, "Dad, if I can, I want to come back. I know we hurt you, but..." I stayed silent. Those words, a year ago, I would have waited forever to hear. But now, I didn't know if I had anything left to reach out with. "Grace," I said, steady and calm. "That day you stood at my door. I understood. From that moment on, we were walking separate roads. Dad, we were young. We made a mistake. I don't want to lose you." I stood up, walked toward the door, my hand on the handle. The whole cafe seemed to stop. Grace looked at me, eyes wet, clinging to a thin thread of hope. I took a breath, turned back. Some decisions, once you say them, you can't take them back. "I don't hate you, but I can't open the door you chose to close." Her head dropped. Her shoulders shook. A small sound of sobbing slipped out. She took a deep breath, trying to hold herself steady. "Mom wants us to stay with you. For a while. Right now, we have nowhere else to go." I didn't answer. Those words pulled me back to 2 goodbyes. The note Emily left that morning, and that autumn night. When they turned and walked away, my hand gripped the door tighter. After a long pause, I let go, went back to the table. "If you need help, I'll help," I said slowly. "But not by living like we used to. I don't have the strength to start all over again." Grace cried hard. People turned to look, but I just sat there, waited, until she wiped her tears, and walked out. Back home, I sank into the chair. Outside, summer sunlight spilled across the yard, but inside, I felt cold. That door was truly closed. Time passed. Sometimes I saw their names on my screen, calls, messages. I didn't delete them, didn't answer. Some wounds need more than an apology to heal. Every night, I step out to the backyard, sit on the wooden bench, beneath the old maple tree, look up at the sky, stars scattered across the dark. It's been a long time since I've dreamed of reunion. Now, I just sit there, listen to the leaves, and let time drift by. One morning, I looked in the mirror. The man staring back had gray in his hair, tired eyes, and a face that had aged 10 years. I whispered to myself, "You still have to live, so that if one day they do come back, you'll be strong enough to look them in the eye and say, 'I'm still here.'" But that door isn't. Then I locked the door and walked out. Life outside went on, like there was never a hollow space inside me. One late autumn afternoon, just as I was walking out of the plant, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't pick up, but something cold ran down my spine, and my thumb hit answer. "Mr. Morgan, this is the city hospital. You need to come right away. It's about Emily. A car accident. Critical condition." My hands clenched the steering wheel. The wind outside whipped against the windshield like a whip. The road to the hospital had never felt so long. Streetlights flashed past, and everything around me seemed to run backward. The day I met Emily, those brief happy years, the note she left, that autumn night when everything changed. I couldn't tell if I was angry, scared, or just hollow inside. The hospital hallway was so white, it hurt my eyes. The ER door was half open. Grace and Haley stood together, faces pale, eyes swollen from crying. Jordan sat slumped in a chair, suit wrinkled, hands covering his head. When she saw me, Grace jumped up. "Dad, Mom. Mom wants to see you. Haley grabbed my hand, ice cold. Please, Dad. Go to her. I stepped inside. Cold white lights, the sharp smell of disinfectant. Emily lay there, her face pale, her breath thin as a thread. Her eyes opened slowly, stopped at me. Travis. Her voice was faint, broken. I walked forward, each step heavy, as if I were walking through all the years behind us. She struggled for air. You have to hear me out. The day I left, I thought I was right. I wanted more out of life, and I couldn't see that everything I needed was already at home. Tears ran down her face. And about the girls, all of that was my fault. I tightened my fists. You've always been their father. I've known that all along. But when I met Jordan, I let him plant that doubt in their heads. I wanted to pull them toward me. He promised them a better life, and I believed him. It felt like someone was squeezing my heart. You're the only one who ever truly loved them. I know that now, and I don't have much time left. I just have one thing to ask. Please, don't abandon them. They only turned against you because of me. I stood there. Everything in my head was a mess. Anger, regret, exhaustion. A part of me wanted to yell. Another part just wanted to sit down and close my eyes. I said slowly, Emily, you chose that path, and you know the price. I can't make promises, but I will never abandon them. She smiled faintly, relieved. Weak, then her eyes closed. When I walked out, my girls were waiting. Dad, what did she say? Grace asked. I put my hand on her back and nudged her forward. Go. Better hear it from her. 3 days later, Emily was gone. No noise. No ceremony. Just an empty hospital room. And a few old photographs. The funeral was on a cloudy day. Jordan stood apart, silent as a stone. I stood with my daughters. For the first time in months, the distance between us felt smaller. When everyone had left, it was just the three of us by the grave. Fresh earth. The smell of damp soil. Grace whispered, her voice breaking. Dad, Mom told us everything. Are you still angry with us? I looked at her, saw real regret in her eyes. I took a long breath. I am angry, but anger doesn't fix anything. What I fear most isn't betrayal. It's losing you. Grace's tears fell fast. Haley cried too, kneeling and grabbing my hand. Dad, give us another chance. Not to pretend nothing happened. Just to be by your side again. To make it right. I stood still. Their words hit old wounds that hadn't healed. I looked down at the two of them on their knees, and I realized they've lost as much as I have. I bent down. Instead of pulling them close, I took their hands, held them tight. A long, quiet pause. I don't know what the future holds, I said softly, but I won't keep the door closed forever. When we left the cemetery, evening had fallen. The car rolled slowly past the fields, thick with mist. The two of them sat in the back, silent. The headlights cut through the fog, a long beam stretching ahead, and inside me, a single heavy question echoed. This time, do I still have the strength not to give up? After the funeral, the little house wasn't completely silent anymore, but the air inside still felt heavy, like a thin, tight string stretched above my head, ready to tremble at the slightest touch. The first few times Grace and Haley came back, we only sat through dinner. The sound of forks on plates rang out like we were sitting in an empty hall, 3 people at one table, each in a world of their own. One evening, Grace leaned against the kitchen door. Dad, we want to make things right. This weekend, can we come over and help out? I just nodded. I wasn't ready to say more, and they weren't ready to ask for more. In the weekends that followed, the house had a little more movement. Grace learned to cook. Haley wiped tables, cleaned up. Sometimes, a faint smile would slip through, only to fade just as quickly. And just when it felt quiet again, old memories came back. One Saturday afternoon, while we were cleaning the garage, Grace suddenly asked, Dad, if Mom hadn't said anything that day, would we have chosen differently? I froze. In my head, I saw that door closing all over again. A wave of old anger rose sharp inside me. I put the broom down, walked straight out to the backyard, and stood under the maple tree, breathing deep to calm down. After a while, I came back. That question, I said slowly. What do you want to hear? Comfort, or the truth? Grace swallowed hard. The truth, Dad. I looked straight at her. That day, whatever Mom said meant more than anything else. But one thing never changed. No matter what she said, I was right here. It's just, you stopped looking this way. No one spoke. Haley lowered her head. Tears fell, splattering on the concrete. After that day, silence hung over the house again for a while. But they still came. And slowly, the conversations over dinner got a little longer. They told me about those years away, the pressure, the regret, and how they couldn't find the courage to come back. I listened. Sometimes I wanted to blame them, but I reminded myself to hear them out. One night, Haley said quietly, just as I set my bowl down, "There were nights I cried, wishing I could come home. But I was scared you'd shut that door forever." I pulled my chair closer, sat beside her, said nothing, just sat there. For the first time in years, she leaned her head on my shoulder. I thought things were getting better. Then, the next morning, an anonymous text appeared. "You think they came back out of love? No, it's because Jordan went broke. You're just a shelter for now." I stared at the screen. No name, no trace, but every word cut into old wounds. That night at dinner, I barely spoke. Grace looked at me, concerned. "Dad, what's wrong?" "Nothing. Eat." And just like that, the air thickened again. A week later, on a rainy afternoon, they came over with a wooden box. Grace set it on the table, her voice soft. "Open it, Dad." Inside was an old photo album, pictures from when they were little. Our first camping trip, a simple birthday in the old kitchen, 2 little girls holding onto my neck, laughing like I was their whole world. Grace's voice cracked. "Dad, keep this for us. We want to start over from here." I turned each page, every photo, cut deep, painful and warm all at once. In those pictures, they were just kids who saw me as everything. I closed the album, my hand tightening around it. "I'll keep it," I said. "But this time, stay." Haley nodded, her eyes shining through tears. "I promise." That night, for the first time in years, the house rang with real laughter, not forced, loud laughter. So loud, it shook the glass in the windows. I sat there, watching them, and I realized they no longer felt like strangers coming for a meal. They were truly coming home. I know the road ahead is still long. My wounds haven't healed, neither have theirs. There will be more clashes, more pain, but this time, at least, none of us chose to turn away. When they left, I stood on the porch, watching their car disappear into the rain. Then I went back inside and turned on the warm light in the living room. It didn't drive out all the shadows, but it was enough to make the room less cold. That night, for the first time in years, I left the lights on until morning. Time moved slow after that. The old wounds didn't disappear overnight, but with those weekend dinners, the house started to breathe again. One evening, I came home and saw a small note on the table. "Dad, we came early, trying to cook your favorite stew." It had been a long time since the kitchen smelled like food waiting for me. Little by little, I got used to the sound of their car pulling up outside. It didn't feel tense like before, just familiar, quietly peaceful. They were still awkward when they talked to me, and I was just as awkward when I answered. But in that clumsiness, there was something more real, something steadier. One winter evening, the 3 of us sat around the table. No music, no TV, just the sound of wind outside. Grace asked, "Dad, do you ever regret forgiving us?" I looked at her. Her eyes were calmer now. I shook my head. "No, forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. It means I don't have to carry that rock inside me anymore. I've carried enough." Haley rested her chin on her hand, her voice soft. "How long will it take for us to earn your trust back?" I thought for a moment, then said, "Trust isn't measured in time. It comes back through the days." We actually walked together again. We went quiet for a long while. But this silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was calm. One late winter day, they asked me to walk with them around the lake, the same lake I hadn't stepped out of the car to see for years. They walked ahead. I followed behind. The cold wind swept through the bare trees. The lake was flat, like a giant mirror, stretching out our shadows. I bent down, picked up a small stone, and tossed it. Ripples spread across the water. I looked at them, and I saw myself. I saw this whole story. Broken, again and again, but still reaching out. We stood at the edge of the water. The wind blew hard. I noticed Grace's hands shaking from the cold. For the first time, I reached out, put my hand on her shoulder, and squeezed gently. Haley stood close, silent, eyes wet. Grace turned, her voice unsteady. "Dad, thank you for giving us the chance to come closer again." I didn't answer, just stood there, watching the ripples fade. I don't know what the future holds. There will still be arguments. There will still be hurt. But this time, I won't close the door. I've realized something. Healing doesn't come when someone comes back to say sorry. It comes when you're calm enough to stand still when they knock again. That night, on the drive home, I didn't go inside right away. I sat in the car, looking at the warm yellow light shining through the window. After a long while, I stepped out, opened the front door, and left it slightly ajar. Then I walked inside, letting the cold wind slip through that small gap. This time, I whispered to myself, I don't know what tomorrow will bring, but tonight, at least, I had enough strength to open the door again.